Lucas has always found art to be a refuge, a sanctuary where he could express himself freely, away from the pressures of the outside world. At 16, he felt like a boat adrift in a sea of challenges and prejudices. Life in his neighborhood was not easy. The judgmental looks and whispered comments followed him like shadows. But when he picked up a paintbrush, he was transformed. Sunlight filtered through his bedroom window, illuminating his canvases. It was a small space, but to Lucas, it was like a great artist's studio. The smell of fresh paint mingled with the aroma of coffee his mother brewed in the kitchen. He often heard her warm voice calling him to breakfast, but he always resisted, immersing himself deeper into his painting. That day, Lucas decided to go to the park. It was his favorite place, a haven of life. The park, with its leafy trees and vibrant flowers, always provided him with the inspiration he needed to create. He grabbed his backpack, filled with paints and brushes, and headed out, determined to capture the essence of the day. Upon arriving, the atmosphere in the park was magical. Children played, adults walked around smiling, and the sound of laughter mixed with the birdsong. Lucas sat down on a wooden bench, took out his materials, and began to paint. Each brushstroke was a release of emotions, a silent cry against the prejudice he faced daily. The canvas began to come to life, and for a moment, Lucas forgot everything. However, the peace of the park was like a fog, easily dispelled. As he concentrated, a group of young people approached. They were laughing and chatting, but Lucas noticed their eyes drifting toward him. It wasn't long before one of the young men, clearly more provocative, began making jokes about Lucas's appearance and his presence there. Lucas tried to ignore them, but their laughter became an electric current that shot through his body, reminding him of the insecurities he was trying so hard to leave behind. Suddenly, a police officer approached, interrupting the scene. Lucas felt his heart race. The police officer, with an authoritative posture, looked at Lucas and asked, "What are you doing here? This place is for people who know how to behave." The police officer's words cut like a sharp blade, and the laughter of the young people echoed in his ear like an echo of humiliation. Lucas felt his throat close up as he tried to form a response. He wanted to say that he was just painting, that he was an artist, that he had a right to be there. But instead, he fell silent, absorbing the humiliation like a sponge. What had been a moment of joy had turned into a nightmare, and Lucas felt the pain of discrimination throb inside his chest. The policeman's words echoed in his mind as he walked away, the gazes of the young men still burning into his back. The park, once a refuge, had now become a battlefield. The art he loved seemed distant, as if it had hidden behind an insurmountable wall. Leaving the park felt like a defeat, and Lucas left the place, his heart heavy, searching for meaning in the midst of the emotional storm raging within him. Lucas walked slowly down the streets that led him back home, each step heavier than the last. The incident in the park echoed in his mind, the police officer's words cutting like sharp blades. He felt the humiliation burned into his skin, a painful reminder that, to some, his presence was an offense. When he got home, his heart was still pounding, but he didn't want his mother to see the pain in his eyes. So he just mumbled an, "I'm fine," before locking himself in his room. Inside the space he had transformed into a studio, Lucas glanced at his art supplies, but his inspiration seemed to have disappeared. The once vibrant paints now seemed dull, as did his feelings. He sat on the edge of his bed, the weight of indignation and shame stifling his creativity. He could hear the laughter of children playing in the street. Life went on, but for him, everything seemed dark and hopeless. What had happened in the park had shaken him. He couldn't understand how anyone could look at him and see only the color of his skin, ignoring his aspirations, his passions. The memories of the joy he had felt while painting were now eclipsed by a shadow of insecurity. The room, which had once been a space of freedom, had become a prison of dark thoughts. It was then that his mind turned to his grandfather. He was a strong man, a veteran who had fought much bigger battles than being a racist cop. Whenever Lucas felt lost, his grandfather's stories of bravery and resilience comforted him. That night, he decided he needed to talk to him. His grandfather's wisdom always seemed to bring clarity in times of confusion. The next morning, Lucas woke up with renewed purpose. After breakfast, he headed to his grandfather's house, which was just a few blocks away. The route was familiar, but anxiety throbbed in his chest. When he arrived, he found his grandfather sitting on the porch, reading a book. The man was an imposing figure, with gray hair and eyes that shone with the wisdom accumulated over the years. "Hi, Grandpa," Lucas exclaimed, trying to hide the concern in his voice. "Hello, my boy. Come, sit here." "How is the art?" Grandpa asked, with a warm smile. Lucas hesitated. It was hard to share what had happened, but he knew he had to. After a moment, the words began to flow. He told his grandfather about the humiliation he had suffered in the park, about the police officer's gaze, and how it had made him feel small and helpless. His grandfather listened intently, his expression changing from concern to understanding. "Lucas, my dear," the grandfather began, "life teaches us difficult lessons. I too faced moments like these, during the war and even after. Discrimination is a battle that many of us know well." Lucas's heart sank when he heard this. He had always admired his grandfather for his bravery, but knowing that he had also faced discrimination made him feel an even deeper bond. His grandfather then shared stories from his youth, when he had to fight not only against enemies, but against the prejudice and injustice that permeated society. "But I always remembered the power of my voice and the importance of using art as a form of resistance. Art has the power to transform pain into beauty, Lucas. You can use your creativity to express what you feel and inspire others," the grandfather said, his voice steady. Lucas listened to every word, absorbing his grandfather's wisdom. He realized he had a choice: to let humiliation define him, or to turn it into something powerful. His grandfather had always believed in the power of resilience, and now Lucas was beginning to understand that too. With a new sense of determination, Lucas promised his grandfather that he would use his art to tell his story. He said goodbye to his grandfather with a lighter heart and returned home, determined to resume his creative work. Art was his path to self-improvement, and he was ready to let it shine. Upon returning home, Lucas felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He locked himself in his room, still filled with paints and brushes, but now with a new perspective. With his grandfather's encouraging words echoing in his mind, he began to prepare his work tools. The afternoon light filtered through the window, creating a soft glow that enveloped his space. Lucas picked up a blank canvas, and as he stared at it, a mixture of anger and determination bubbled up inside him. He didn't just want to create something beautiful. He wanted to capture the pain he had felt in the park, the injustice so many people faced on a daily basis. It was time to turn that pain into art. The first brushstrokes came easily. Lucas painted a central figure, a young artist representing himself, surrounded by shadows that symbolized prejudice and humiliation. Each stroke was an emotional release, a silent scream that resonated in the vibrant colors he chose. The feelings of sadness and anger were slowly replaced by a sense of empowerment. The canvas began to come alive, and with each brushstroke, Lucas felt stronger. However, as Lucas immersed himself in his work, he couldn't help but let memories of the incident in the park flood his mind. He remembered the police officer's disdainful gaze and the laughter of the young men, as if they echoed in his thoughts. The pain of humiliation was still fresh, and he wondered if he could ever truly overcome it. The negative voices that tried to undermine his confidence kept appearing, challenging his resolve. After several hours of intense focus, Lucas finally stepped back and gazed at the painting. The image was powerful, a visceral representation of his inner struggle. But he still felt he needed to do more. He needed his message to reach others who might be going through the same thing. Over the next few days, Lucas continued to work on his painting, paying close attention to every detail. He wanted those who saw it to feel the intensity of his emotions. The idea of exhibiting his art in a local gallery began to take shape in his mind. He knew that if he could do it, he could convey a powerful message about resilience and resilience. Then, one sunny morning, Lucas decided to visit the local art gallery. He walked through the streets, feeling nervous but determined. The gallery was a vibrant space where different artists displayed their work. Upon entering, he was greeted by the smell of fresh paint and a variety of artistic styles that delighted him. Lucas approached the gallery owner, a middle-aged woman with a warm gaze. "Hi, my name is Lucas, and I'm a local artist. I was wondering if I could exhibit my work here," he said, his voice shaking. The woman looked at him curiously. "Of course. We're always looking for new talent. What kind of work do you have in mind?" Lucas hesitated, but decided to open up. "It's a painting about the fight against prejudice and overcoming it. I want to share a message of resistance through art." He took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline rush through his veins. The woman smiled. "That's amazing, Lucas. Art has an immense power to communicate and inspire. Bring your painting and we can discuss the exhibition." A smile of relief spread across Lucas's face. He knew he was taking an important step in his journey, not only for himself but also for all those facing similar challenges. With a new flame of hope lit in his heart, he returned home, eager to finish his painting and prepare for the exhibition. Upon his arrival, the shadows of the incident still haunted him, but now they were just a reminder of his determination to fight. Lucas was ready to turn his pain into power and show the world that art could be a tool for change. With the idea of the exhibition bubbling in his mind, Lucas immersed himself in his painting with renewed fervor. Each brushstroke seemed to tell a story, a narrative not only of pain but of hope and resilience. He worked day and night, determined to ensure that every detail conveyed its message. The sun was setting and the stars were beginning to shine in the sky, but Lucas was still in his studio, immersed in the world of colors and shapes. As he worked, he thought about how art could bring people together and spark important conversations about racism and prejudice. He wanted his paintings to be not just an expression of his emotions, but an invitation to reflect. The idea that his work could impact others motivated him even more. Every time his hands touched the canvas, he felt like he was bringing to life something much bigger than himself. With the painting finally complete, Lucas stood admiring his work. It was an explosion of color, shape, and emotion that captured the struggle and resilience of his journey. The young artist he had painted was surrounded by shadows, but his hands were raised in a gesture of resistance, as if he was challenging the world to see him for who he truly was, a human being with dreams and hopes. In the days that followed, Lucas also worked on the details of the exhibition. He knew he needed an impactful presentation for his work, so he decided to create a text that would explain the inspiration behind the painting, a description that would resonate with those who saw it. The text would talk about his experience in the park, about the fight against discrimination, and the importance of art as a form of resistance. He wanted people to feel the power of his message. Finally, the day of the exhibition arrived. The gallery was decorated with works by various artists, and Lucas felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as he prepared for the event. He had chosen a simple but elegant outfit so that his art would be the main focus. As the guests began to arrive, a wave of anxiety washed over him. He knew his painting could spark deep conversation, but he also worried about the possibility of criticism. As the night wore on, Lucas watched the reactions of the people who approached his work. Some stopped, staring intently, while others whispered to each other. He felt butterflies in his stomach, but with each smile or positive comment, his confidence grew. This was his chance to make a difference. At one point, a group of young people approached the painting, their expressions of admiration showing that they were moved by the work. One of them, a young man with a thoughtful look on his face, said, "This is very profound. I never thought about how art can be a form of resistance." Lucas felt a warmth in his chest. The conversation was beginning, and he felt more comfortable sharing his story. He began to talk about his experience in the park, explaining how the incident had led him to create the painting. The words flowed with sincerity, and he found himself connecting with people in ways he never imagined possible. He saw tears in some people's eyes and smiles of understanding in others. The night wore on, and Lucas felt more confident with each interaction. He realized that despite the humiliation he had faced, he had found strength in art. His grandfather's words echoed in his mind, reminding him that true resilience comes from within and that art has the power to transform pain into beauty. As the exhibition drew to a close, Lucas paused to reflect on what he had achieved. He had not only exhibited his art, but had also created a space for dialogue and empathy. As the last person left the gallery, a sense of accomplishment washed over him. Lucas knew this was just the first of many exhibitions. He was determined to continue using his art to fight prejudice and inspire change. As he left the gallery, he looked up at the stars and felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey was not over. In fact, it was just beginning. The rising sun lit the sky in shades of orange and pink, and Lucas woke up feeling refreshed. The exhibition had been a success, and he couldn't help but smile as he remembered people's reactions to his painting. The sense of accomplishment and empowerment still pulsed within him. However, something in his chest still troubled him. The incident with the police officer in the park had not left his mind, and he felt he needed to confront that part of his history. While eating breakfast, Lucas decided it was time to face his past. He searched for information about the officer who had caused him so much pain. After some online research, he found an article that mentioned his name, Carlos Mendez, an officer who had been part of the local police force for several years. Lucas felt a mix of emotions, anger, confusion, and, in a way, empathy. He knew he needed to remember that behind the uniform was a human being. Throughout the day, the idea of finding Carlos kept going through his head. He wanted the police officer to understand how his actions had impacted his life. He felt the need to free himself, to not let that episode define who he was. After much hesitation, he decided to seek him out. Lucas didn't know how the conversation would unfold, but he was determined to face that chapter in his life. Later, he found the address of the police station where Carlos worked. With his heart racing and his mind full of questions, Lucas headed there. As he entered the station, he was greeted by an air of activity. Officers were chatting and working on various tasks, but Lucas felt the attention on him. He was not a criminal. He was there to claim his voice. When he finally found Carlos, the police officer was at a desk, examining documents. Lucas hesitated for a moment, but determination led him to approach. "Excuse me, Mr. Mendez?" His voice came out firmer than he had imagined. Carlos looked up, and Lucas could see the surprise on the officer's face. "Yes? Can I help you?" he asked, a little disconcerted. Lucas took a deep breath. "I'm Lucas, the young man you humiliated in the park. We need to talk." The police officer was silent for a few seconds, processing the words. He looked older than Lucas remembered, and for a moment, he felt a twinge of empathy. Carlos didn't seem like a bad person, but his actions were undeniable. I didn't know you were coming here," Carlos said, looking away. "I'm sorry about what happened." Lucas sat across from him, trying to contain his emotions. "Not only did you humiliate me in front of other people, but you made me question my worth. Words have immense power, and yours hurt me deeply." Carlos shook his head, his eyes filled with regret. "I didn't really think about the consequences. I just did what I thought was right at the time. I shouldn't have acted that way." The conversation continued, and Lucas allowed himself to share how the incident had affected his life. He spoke of the painting he had created as a way to overcome the humiliation, to transform the pain into art. As he spoke, he realized that he was not only reclaiming his story, but also offering Carlos an opportunity to reflect. The officer listened intently, and the shadows of guilt and remorse reflected on his face. "I don't want this to define you," Lucas said, emotion evident in his voice. "We all make mistakes, but it's important to learn from them. I hope you can do that too." Carlos looked at Lucas, and for the first time, he seemed to really see the young man in front of him. "I want to learn. I really do. Life is much more than what we do in a moment. I would like to redeem myself." The dialogue turned into a mutual understanding. Lucas felt a little lighter, as if a part of that pain had been lifted. He didn't know what the future held, but at that moment, he realized that forgiveness was a powerful way to overcome. As Lucas left the police station, he felt empowered. He had found a way to transform his pain into understanding, and that was the true meaning of resilience. The journey was far from over, but he now felt more prepared to face whatever came next. The following days brought new clarity to Lucas. The conversation with Carlos Mendez had been a turning point that had allowed him to see the incident in a new light. He was eager to share this experience with his grandfather, a man who had always been a source of wisdom and strength in his life. On that sunny afternoon, Lucas decided to visit his grandfather's house, which was located in a quiet neighborhood surrounded by trees and colorful flowers. Upon arriving, he smelled the familiar aroma of home-cooked food coming from the kitchen. He knocked on the door, and soon his grandfather, a gray-haired man with a welcoming smile, opened the door. "Lucas, my boy, it's so good to see you." His grandfather hugged him warmly, his touch firm and reassuring. "Hi, Grandpa. I brought some news," Lucas replied as he entered the house, feeling the familiarity of home. After settling down at the kitchen table, where a simple and delicious snack awaited, Lucas began to tell them about the exhibition. His eyes lit up as he described people's reactions and the impact his art was having. His grandfather listened attentively, always with a proud smile on his lips. But soon Lucas remembered what he really wanted to discuss. "Grandpa, do you remember the story you told me about strength in the face of adversity?" The grandfather nodded, his eyes lighting up. "Of course, my boy. Life is full of challenges, but it's how we respond to them that defines who we are. I met the police officer who humiliated me in the park," Lucas revealed, noting his grandfather's reaction. "I talked to him and explained how I felt." The grandfather stopped chewing, the expression on his face becoming more serious. "And how did that conversation go?" Lucas took a deep breath, remembering the weight of the words he had shared. He apologized. "Grandpa, I was able to convey to him the impact his actions had on my life. And in some ways, I feel like that helped me move on." "That's wonderful, Lucas. You had the courage to face not only the pain, but also the opportunity to show him a path of learning," his grandfather said in awe. The conversation flowed naturally between them, with Lucas sharing his feelings about forgiveness and the importance of understanding. He realized that what he had done was not just for himself, but for Carlos as well. The grandfather paused and looked into his grandson's eyes. "Sometimes life puts us in challenging situations, not to break us, but to teach us. Forgiveness is a powerful tool, my son. When you forgive, you not only release the other person, but you also release yourself from a burden," he said with a tone of wisdom. Lucas nodded, understanding that the lesson went beyond the incident itself. It was about the ability to turn difficult experiences into opportunities for growth. He had always admired the way his grandfather faced challenges with dignity and grace, and now he felt like he was beginning to walk a similar path. As they talked, Lucas realized that his grandfather's love and wisdom had always been a safe haven amidst life's storms. He felt like he had grown not only as an artist, but also as a human being. His grandfather's support had been a fundamental pillar in his journey, and now, more than ever, he wanted to honor that connection. Before saying goodbye, Lucas looked into his grandfather's eyes and said, "Thank you for always being here, Grandpa. Your words and teachings mean the world to me. I will always be here, my boy. Remember, every step you take is a victory. Keep believing in yourself and the strength you have inside you," replied the grandfather, squeezing Lucas' hand. Leaving his grandfather's house, Lucas felt light. The weight he had been carrying was lifting, and he was ready to continue his journey of self-discovery and resilience. The conversation with his grandfather had given him new perspectives, and he was eager to see how life would unfold from there. Days passed, and Lucas felt stronger with each passing moment. The conversation with his grandfather had inspired him to explore new possibilities in his life. With renewed determination, he decided it was time to take his art to the next level. With this in mind, he began looking for opportunities to exhibit his work in places he had never considered before. One morning, while surfing the internet, Lucas came across an art contest looking for emerging artists to showcase their work at a popular gallery in the city. The theme of the contest was resilience, and Lucas immediately felt a connection. It was the perfect opportunity for him to share not only his art, but also the message of resilience that had become so central to his life. He spent hours crafting the proposal, revisiting his works and choosing the ones that best reflected his journey. However, there was one piece that was missing, a new painting that would capture the essence of everything he had experienced. Lucas sat in his studio, surrounded by blank canvases, and began to paint. As the colors blended together, he allowed himself to remember the moments of pain, humiliation, and ultimately, overcoming. The new work depicted a heart intertwined with roots and flowers, symbolizing how painful experiences could give rise to something beautiful and strong. He sensed that this painting was not just a representation of his struggle, but a statement of resilience and hope. Each brushstroke seemed to free him from another piece of the weight he was carrying, and by the end of the day, Lucas was exhausted but felt complete. Finally, the day arrived to submit his entry to the competition. He reviewed all the details, wrote a statement explaining his creative process, and with his heart racing, hit the submit button. It was a bold move, but at the same time, a liberating one. Lucas allowed himself to dream about the possibility of his art being shown in a renowned gallery, but he also knew that the most important thing was what he had learned along the way. After weeks of anticipation, the results of the competition were announced. Lucas was at work, focused on his daily tasks, when he received a notification on his cell phone. His heart raced when he opened the email. "Congratulations, Lucas. Your work has been selected for the exhibition at Galleria Arte Nova." He couldn't contain his emotion. Tears streamed down his face as he allowed himself to feel the happiness and relief. After the confirmation, Lucas began preparing for the exhibition. He knew this was a turning point in his life. As he prepared, he decided he wanted to share his story with other aspiring artists. Inspired by his conversation with his grandfather and the new direction his life was taking, Lucas organized a small community event to encourage others to express their own stories through art. The day of the event arrived, and Lucas was surprised by the number of people who showed up. He felt like a guide, someone who could help others find their own voice. He shared not only his art, but also the message that overcoming was possible, even in the face of adversity. As he spoke to the audience, Lucas saw faces that reflected pain, hope, and the will to fight. He understood that art was not just a form of expression, but a means of connecting people, of creating a safe space for everyone to share their experiences. At the end of the event, many attendees reached out to thank Lucas for his inspiration. He felt a wave of gratitude wash over him, and he realized that what he had experienced was not just about him, but about the community and the collective strength they could find together. With the show approaching and his life changing in unexpected ways, Lucas was finally ready to face what came next. He knew the path would still be challenging, but he was confident that with each step he took, he was closer to becoming the most authentic version of himself. The big day of the exhibition finally arrived, and the atmosphere at the Arte Nova Gallery was electric. Lucas woke up early, feeling a mix of excitement and nervousness. He looked at himself in the mirror and smiled, wearing a simple but elegant shirt that reflected his authentic style. He wanted his art to speak for itself, and he was determined to make the most of this moment. Upon arriving at the gallery, Lucas was met with a vibrant scene. The walls were adorned with artwork from a variety of emerging artists, each carrying their own stories and emotions. The smell of fresh paint and soft music in the background created an atmosphere that pulsated with creativity. Lucas felt his heart skip a beat when he saw his own painting, the one symbolizing resilience, hanging in a prominent position. As guests began to arrive, Lucas watched people's reactions as they admired his work. He saw looks of curiosity, smiles of understanding, and even tears of emotion. Each interaction was an opportunity to tell his story, to share what he had experienced and what overcoming meant to him. Throughout the evening, Lucas engaged in deep conversations. He spoke with other artists, who shared their own experiences of struggle and resilience. One of them, a woman named Anna, approached Lucas and spoke about how his painting had touched her deeply. She had been through difficult times in her life, and the vibrant colors of the work inspired her to fight on. "It's like you captured what I feel inside," she said, her eyes shining with gratitude. These emotional exchanges only increased Lucas's confidence. He began to feel more comfortable sharing his own story, not just as an artist, but as someone who had overcome challenges. The words that had once been bottled up inside him now flowed freely. He realized he was becoming a voice for those who, like him, were facing their own demons. As the evening wore on, a group of young people approached him. They were art students and eager to hear more about his journey. Lucas remembered when he himself was an aspiring artist, full of doubts and insecurities. With a smile, he encouraged them to follow their dreams, no matter the obstacles. Art is a form of expression, a way to transform pain into beauty. "Never let anyone tell you that you can't do it," he declared, passion shining through his voice. The highlight of the evening was when the gallery curator took to the stage. He praised the participating artists and, in particular, highlighted the importance of Lucas's work. "This painting is not only an expression of talent, but a testament to the strength of the human soul," he said, and the applause that followed echoed throughout the gallery. Lucas felt emotional. He remembered his conversation with Carlos and how that night was the culmination of his journey of overcoming. The weight that had once oppressed him now transformed into a feeling of lightness and fulfillment. Art, which had once seemed like an escape, was now an intrinsic part of who he was. As the evening drew to a close, Lucas looked around and realized that he was not just celebrating an exhibition, but a new phase in his life. The journey that had brought him here had been full of challenges, but each step had shaped him in a unique way. He understood that true victory lay not only in being recognized, but in having the courage to get back up after falling. With a heart full of hope and gratitude, Lucas left the gallery. That night, he knew the road ahead was filled with uncertainty, but also opportunity. Most importantly, he knew he was not alone on this journey. Art had become not just a form of expression, but a means of connection, empowerment, and most importantly, of overcoming. The days following the exhibition passed quickly, but the energy of that night still resonated in Lucas's heart. He had received countless messages of support and gratitude, not only from friends and family, but also from strangers who were touched by his story. Each word inspired him to continue his journey of self-discovery and growth. As Lucas reviewed the photographs from the exhibition, he sat in his studio, surrounded by his work. The space now felt like more than a workspace. It was a sanctuary for his creativity and resilience. He reflected on how he had evolved. The insecurity that had plagued him before, when he faced humiliation and scorn, had given way to a new confidence, a strength he never knew he possessed. One day, while walking around town, Lucas came across a community of artists organizing a mural event in an underprivileged neighborhood. He remembered how art had been a way out for him during difficult times and decided he wanted to be a part of the initiative. It was a perfect opportunity to connect with others and give back to the community that had supported him throughout his journey. When Lucas joined the group, he felt a new excitement. The artists were discussing ideas, and the creative energy was palpable. He remembered his painting in the gallery and the message of resilience it conveyed. He decided that he wanted the mural they would create to be a symbol of hope for the community, something people could look up to and that would inspire them to believe in themselves. Lucas and other artists began sketching ideas for the mural. They decided that the piece would be a celebration of diversity and the strength of the community. Each contributed elements that represented their personal stories. For Lucas, this meant including the heart intertwined with roots and flowers, which now had an even deeper meaning as it represented the mutual support they found in each other. During the process of creating, Lucas remembered his days of struggle and how each brushstroke helped him break free from the chains of the past. Each day, as the work took shape, he too was transformed. He spoke with community members who stopped to observe the progress, listening to their stories and encouraging them to express themselves. Lucas realized that art was not just a form of individual expression, but a way to build bonds and promote collective healing. The day of the mural's unveiling arrived, and Lucas was excited. He was determined that the piece would not just be a painting on a wall, but a message of hope. When the cloth was removed, the crowd erupted in applause and cheers. The mural was an explosion of color and shape, representing the strength and resilience of the community. The words of gratitude and emotion that emerged during the inauguration touched Lucas' heart. He saw tears of joy in the eyes of people who felt represented, who understood that their stories, although difficult, were equally valid. The mural was not only a space for art, but a testament to collective struggle and overcoming. That day, Lucas realized that his journey was far from over. It was just the beginning of a new chapter. He wanted to continue using his art to empower others, to tell stories and inspire change. He decided that from that moment on, he would dedicate himself to community projects that aimed to help young artists find their voices and express their experiences. Lucas felt more connected to his community than ever before, and he knew that every step he had taken had a purpose. Through art, he found not only himself, but also the ability to impact the lives of those around him. As the sun set behind the mural, he made a promise to himself. He would never forget where he came from, but would always look forward, ready to face new challenges and embrace new opportunities. He smiled, surrounded by friends, new connections, and the knowledge that art was, indeed, a powerful force for transformation.